Welcome to The Other Side of Leadership, a series by Somi Docs that explores leadership beyond titles, roles, and traditional hierarchies. In medicine and healthcare, leadership is often defined by position. But every day, there are women shaping teams, supporting colleagues, mentoring others, and creating impact in ways that may not always be visible or formally recognized. This series highlights those moments, the quiet influence, the meaningful presence, and the everyday actions that redefine what leadership truly looks like. And in this part of the series, we're also talking about the support that individuals have gotten through their leadership journey. So today, I have the privilege of speaking with Dr. Joyce Robert, who serves as the program director at BB Health Family Medicine Residency Program in Lewis, Delaware. What stands out most about JR to me is how she leads through kindness, joy, and fellowship, consistently showing up in ways that impact those around her. I nominated her because not only is she a dear friend of mine, but she is also a role model for me, as well as, a badass mom, and also the president of the Delaware Academy of Family Physicians. And because she reflects the kind of leadership this series is all about, one that goes beyond titles and is felt in everyday moments. So I'm really excited about this conversation with Joyce. All right. Well, JR, can you tell me, right, about your experience with leadership? And if you want to share your story about a moment when you were told you weren't ready for leadership or a leadership role, or that your timeline should be longer than you expected.
All right. And first of all, I want to give a shout out to you, Dr. Mary Ellis. You're amazing as well. And thanks for the intro. So, oh my goodness, where do I start? Yes, so I've definitely been in that position where I felt that I was ready for leadership, and then I guess the person who may have had some control over that didn't think that I was ready. And I remember that conversation. Okay, first of all, full disclaimer, I was telling Dr. Ellis that I do get emotional. That's just who I am. Maybe because I'm a Pisces, I was born in March, but I don't know. But I do remember there was a position that was open. And, I've been in like academic medicine for a long time at that point, for a while now. More than 5 years is like a long time in academic medicine. But, I've been there, but in that space for a long time. So I thought I was ready. I was prepared. I updated my CV. I had called the meeting. I did what, people told you to do. You got to claim it. You got to, take it. And at that point, I didn't really have many doubts that I wouldn't get the position, because I was kind of like prepping myself for it. And I knew this is something that I wanted. So sat down in the chair in the office, was like, I want to take this position. And then they were just like, no, we had another person in mind. And I think tears, like brink of tears, like filled me. I was like, and I had to like hold it back, like, what? Because it totally threw me off. Because I was already in a leadership position, like what Dr. Ellis was saying, like I was already in leadership, like doing the things. And it was just like just a different sort of program, but like similar leadership position. So I'm like, I'm very familiar with the rules and regulations. I have good rapport with the faculty and the residents. Like, why not me? And I don't know if I ever had a good answer at that moment. And I guess after we had, talking with the person, they were like, oh, well, give me a list of all the things that you do. And I'm like, okay. But I think that was just a measure of like distraction, to be honest, like thinking back on it. But of course, at the time, I was like, right. So I'm writing, like, I had a whole list, like, like all the reasons why. But that decision was already made. Nothing that I could have done or said or wrote would have changed. At least what I think now would have changed. But at that moment, I was like, well, if I just keep showing, if I keep doing this, keep doing that. But sometimes that door was already closed. So it took some realization, talking with friends, mentors, family members, and I wanted to go into a space where I was appreciated for all the work that I did. So that's what I did. So yeah, that story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your story probably resonates with a lot of us, right? And in leadership, and a lot of us women doctors, right, where we have that imposter syndrome that we don't like to talk about. And then we get to that moment where we see ourselves getting ready because we come up with that list, right? Like you said, you prepared yourself and you showed up to this meeting, and you find that things had already been decided for you. And so talk to me a little bit more about the support that you really needed after that moment of being told that, besides having your family, right, your awesome family and your friendship circle that you do have, that I know that you definitely get support about. Like, talk to me a little bit more of what that support actually looked like for you. What kind of support did you need at that point, JR?
Oh, a lot of support. Like you mentioned, I have like an awesome husband who's been, with me since medical school. So we've known each other, a long time. So, he's probably was my first contact point of contact. And that was great. And of course, the kids like kind of helped ground me. I'm like, okay, this is a career. This is not my entire life. But at that point, it did seem like it was my entire life, because like this is something that I really worked for. I prayed for, and God was like, okay, I'm gonna go in a different turn. A lot of my sister, she also is like very big support. She's very familiar with corporate and how things work, and she's just like, listen, then they're lost type thing. But really just other like-minded individuals, other doctors, friends, other family members who really stood me up and was like, you know what, this just wasn't meant for you, and that's fine. And I had to come to realization that that was fine. Like, even though in my head and my heart that I was like, oh, this is it. Like, I just saw myself there in that position, in that role. And then I made a change and I switched states. Was able to find a place that that I'm really able to grow and to put my talents elsewhere, as they say. And it kind of worked out for me.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, that definitely worked out for you in the long run, right? Like, it was a blessing in disguise, perhaps, that the outcome of that meeting. But how about like the timeline that you kind of felt at that moment? What was the impact of that? And what did it feel like for you to almost be kind of told that, well, now you have to shift your plans, right? What did that timeline feel like for you at that moment, right? Like, I'm sure the moving states didn't come right away.
Right,
Right?
right. Yeah, it didn't. I mean, and that was a tough time. That was like, COVID, the thick of COVID. And I think that also sort of pushed me to look a little bit more globally, because I think the pandemic taught a lot of people. It was a devastating time, and being and working in New York as a physician was probably one of the hardest times in my career, just as we know, the pandemic. So I think, but it also gave me a lens like, wow, like life is short. And I think a lot of people thought that way during COVID, like, um, and especially in the workplace, that I could be here. And I saw, because I'm like, I had a colleague that was very sick at that time. Like, sorry, it was hard. That was a hard time, even.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ellis probably knows who the person I'm talking about. But
Mhm.
so it was just like, we went to work every day. We had masks and paper bags and different things like that, and people like on ventilators and intensive care units and things like that. So going home, and my family was safe. My kids were remote. My husband was remote. I was out there in the streets, literally in the streets. But I think it just puts in a different perspective. Like, life is short. You have these hiccups, and you just got to keep moving on and see where God takes you. I think like the what was happening at work, and then the pandemic and all that, I think everything kind of had its place and just hit me where I kind of needed to kind of refocus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. I know that's hard to go back to that and remember, but it really sounds like at that time, you know, you were already sort of committed to the idea of being a leader and finding your place right at the table, right? And that was critical for you to sort of pivot after that meeting and at that moment of being told that, there is no seat here for you essentially, right? That, this decision has already been made. So, let's kind of like go on the other side of that and talk to me, JR, about a time that, you had a mentor, right, who helped you step into this leadership perspective or mindset sooner than you thought, right? Or maybe helped you see who you were already and you didn't probably see yourself in that time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had a lot of mentors in my life, but one that stood out was way in the beginning. They were actually my faculty when I was a resident. And then my goal at the time, like post residency, was to really work in a community setting, underserved. That was like my mission as a family physician, was to work in those settings. So I did. So like right after residency, I worked in East Harlem, very underserved area, for a little bit. And then my faculty at the time was approached to start a brand new program, and he was supposed to be the program director. So I was like, oh, that's exciting, kept it moving. And then he approached me. He was like, hey, Joyce, would you consider being like inaugural faculty, being one of the faculty members to help start the program? I'm like, oh, no. And then my faculty at the time was approached to start a brand new program, and he was supposed to be the program director. So I was like, oh, that's exciting, kept it moving. And then he approached me. He was like, hey, Joyce, would you consider being like inaugural faculty, being one of the faculty members to help start the program? I'm like, oh, no.
We'll be right back.
What if networking in healthcare actually worked the way it was supposed to? No chasing posts, no algorithms deciding what you see. We built a WhatsApp community for healthcare professionals, where conversations happen in real time and people actually respond. One of those spaces is Leadership for Women in Healthcare, and these are some of the women inside it. Beyond that, there are rooms for AI, business and medicine, non-clinical paths, students, and more. You step in where it fits, and you start connecting right away.
Let's get back to the show.
Like, first of all, I was like only a few months out of residency. And at that point, I didn't see myself as faculty or an educator. It was like, well, I need some more time. Not right now. I just want to sort of work in this FQHC type space. And then he really encouraged me. He was like, no, you're a great teacher. And I'm like, am I? And then he was like, yeah, like I remember when I was faculty, anytime, they would just throw the student in the call room and like, who wants to work with them? Everyone would like look from side to side. And I was like always the first one to have my hand up. And I'm like, oh, like I didn't, realize that I did that. That was just like, oh, of course, I love working with the med students, or like the way you interacted with the junior residents. You always were very like patient with them and wanted to teach them and, took time with them. And I'm like, oh, and he was like, and you won the STFM teaching award. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, oh, I guess so. But like, really, I did not see myself in that space as faculty and like being a part of program and like teaching residents and students to that capacity more than, okay, I'm a senior resident, this is what I have to do, or this kind of lets the time go by, like having a student next to you. So and then he like really encouraged me, because at that point I was like, no. And I think I said no maybe more than once. And then, after he sort of given those examples, like, no, you have it in you. This is what I've seen over the 3 years working with you as your faculty. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe. So I was like, all right, why not? So, and I think that was a big pivotal moment of that switch from, being a community physician only to really being faculty. And I love faculty, so I never look back. I was in academic medicine more than a decade now. But it really started with my mentor having kind of that vision for me that I didn't see, tapping into that potential that I didn't think that I had. And especially, at that point, there weren't a lot of like Black female faculty. They probably were, but we weren't the majority. So like really seeing myself in that academic space, because academic is like, woo, academic. I saw myself more as a community doc. And I think those are just two different avenues with two different skill sets. So I know the academic part will probably stretch me a little bit more. And that was like a little bit intimidating at the time. But I'm glad that I did it, because I think if that wasn't the case, who knows if I would have been here as a program director, and really loving what I do.
Yeah, and I think that story really highlights for me the importance of having the fellowship around you of those people that really can see your potential and calling you out on it, right? Because, to your point of you saying you just saw yourself as, a community doctor, but I think that in itself to me is also being a leader, right? Being
Right.
a physician in your community and serving your community, which I know is the reason why you chose to work in FQHC and in that setting. So, but I think it's just really interesting that a lot of us have that shared perspective of, being a family doctor, being female and being minority, that we all don't see ourselves in other roles, right? Like coming out of medical school, then going to residency, we sort of like have this painted picture already almost that this is where we're supposed to go and this is supposed to be our trajectory, right? And then
Right.
someone pointed out, like, JR, you are the person that everyone looks to for teaching, for knowledge, and for role modeling. So I think that really highlights to me a lot about perspective and seeing yourself, like who you really see yourself as, right?
Right.
And so if someone was to describe your leadership without mentioning your job title, what would they say, JR?
I definitely think I'm a collaborative leader. I like working in teams and kind of bouncing off ideas. As Dr. Ellis knows, I'm always texting her about what should I do? What do you think? Giving her scenarios. So I think definitely I'm not a person that works in silos. I probably get some of my energy just from other, great thought leaders. That's what I love about going to conferences. I just absorb the energy and the information and the one-on-one conversations about things and also the group conversations. So I would say like a collaborative leader. I'm definitely big picture, like visionary, this is what I want to do. I may need people to help me like look at the minor details, but I'm definitely a big big person, sorry. Big picture visionary is what I see myself. And I like to have fun. So and just doing things together, I think that's what kind of fills my cup. That community. And maybe that's that's why I love family medicine, because we are very community, whether it's like your community. I mean, there's like your work community, your home, like my community here is my family. And then there's like schools, there's different communities. And sometimes I just get my needs met in different spaces in my life, different areas. So
Yeah, and I'll definitely say you are the person that I think of the most when I think of community, JR, when I think of people knowing you, and not just because they know you, but like when they see you, right, they get this sense and feeling like, oh, it's Joyce. Right. And so for those that don't know, Joyce is definitely, she goes to a lot of conferences. And when I do get a chance to meet her in those conferences, like I will definitely observe that, you are a rock star and people know who you are and always flock to come talk to you because you are constantly building that connection and that fellowship with people. And I think you're always sort of provoking like thought and ideas, right, with everyone. And I think that's sort of like how you and I kind of fostered our friendship and, our fellowship, because we found a togetherness during that season in our life. And so,
yeah.
That's what I appreciate about you so much, even though I kind of egg you on all the time and say, Joyce, everyone. So, so when I think of a leader, I think of someone like you who brings people together, who really knows how to sort of, from all walks of life, right? No matter where they're from or what their background is, I feel like you have such a natural way of, being able to bring people together, right? And that's not easy to do, right? As a woman in this leadership role that you have. So that's, I think, what really kind of astonishes me about you and your work that you do. So do you have any parting words for us, Dr. Robert, for everyone that's watching you,
Oh my goodness.
about leadership, or maybe just leave us with a quote or something that means something to you?
Like I always like to say at my program, like it takes a village to build a program, but I always think it takes a village fill in the dot. That's like an African, I don't know which country, I probably should African proverb about it takes a village to raise a child. We probably all heard of that. But you can expand it. It takes a village XYZ to raise a family, whether, biofam or non-biofam, residency program, like takes a village with that. With anything, it's really hard to do things in silos. And to your point, I just love connecting people, like making those connections. So I think it just says takes a village, fill in the blank.
Yeah, I love that. But tell me one last thing though, JR. Who
Yes.
are you lifting up right now? And why is that important to
Ooh.
you? Since you are that community-driven leader, right? And it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
Who is it that you're lifting up right now?
Besides, cause my first thing I was thinking about my children, but I was like, oh, that's probably a cop out. I was like, oh, Isaac and Ava, of course.
Of course.
Putting in baby steps with them, like, oh man, that's that's a good question. So you mean like a mentee or something like that? I mean, I don't know. That's a tough question, Dr. Ellis. I feel like there's so many, like, oh man, who am I lifting up? Well, I can share a story. Oh man, it's so okay. Oh man. Okay, so maybe a story, and then this person had contacted me. So like there was this person who applied to our residency a few years back, and you know how with the match she ended up not matching, but she ended up going to another program that she did really well at, and then now she was like chief resident. Now she's married, and like she's going to be an attending just in a few weeks. And I really love those stories because again, that connection. So even if she didn't end up where I was, but I was able to connect her to another place, and it just kind of like worked out for her. And she's thriving, she's living, she's married, she's living her best life. So I really just like, to your point, I just like connecting people, and even if I'm not, just that small, really, I mean, that's what life is really this that connection. So when I think of her, I'm like, oh my goodness, like it's just so cool how. And initially she was like, oh, I thought I was going to be in your program. It just didn't work out. Just like with my story, like I thought I was supposed to be in a particular place and it didn't work out, but it ended up working out. It didn't work out, but it ends up working out. And it's really hard to see it in the moment because even when people say it'll all work out, you're just looking at them like, I'm miserable right now. Like, let me just be in this misery for a little bit. But it's all hindsight is always 2020. But like when you step back and you see where your life took you, and even like meeting Dr. Ellis was like serendipity, like how I just ended up being in a virtual room and I'm like, oh, hey, and then how we connected. But that was timing. I could have I think even that day I told you, like, I didn't even want to log on in that day. I was like, oh, I'm so tired, but we committed and they make sure you go to.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm like a woman of faith. So I think like, all right, God has his bigger picture, like whatever he can use me for whatever way, then I'm down for it. But I could think of other stories, but that one, just kind of came up.
I think it's safe to say that you're lifting up or have lifted up a lot of people that have come across your path. So thank you so much, Joyce, for being a part of this conversation with me and for sharing your perspective, right? What you shared today is really exactly what this whole series is about: leadership that isn't always visible, but is deeply impactful, right? As you've shared with all of your experiences and your stories. So to everyone who's watching or listening, we hope this conversation expands how you see leadership, not just in others, but in yourself. So this is the other side of leadership. And thank you, Dr. Joyce Robert.
Oh, Thank you, Dr. Mary Ellis. Take care. Bye.